In this part 2 video of making a hollow globe ornament, we're going to turn what I call the finial cap and the finial. Some people call this the icicle. Turning delicate finials can be a challenge, but they can also be very satisfying. If you missed last week's video, there'll be a link in the description below, and I'll also have a link at the end of this video. So let's move on turning this icicle. Hi, I'm Mike Peace. I'm passionate about wood turning, and I'm here to share with you tips, tricks, techniques, and projects to help make you a better wood turner. So if this is something you're interested in, I'll get this right one of these days. Click on the subscribe button. For the finial, you can either use some type of exotic like this Goncalves Alves, ebony, cocobolo. There's lots of different woods you can use. Or you can use a domestic wood that's hard, such as this piece of maple that we're going to use today, Bradford pear. I use quite a bit. The key is it needs to be about an inch or so square. You can get by with something a little bit smaller. It's got to be big enough where when you turn it around, the bottom will cover that hole. In our case, we did a 5/8 inch hole on the globe. It needs to be about 6 inches, about 6 inches long. That should be enough to give us a finial cap with a tenon on it, and leave the rest of it for the icicle with a little bit of a scrap left over for tenon. But it's going to be based on the size of your particular ornament. So I could turn this between centers, but what I'm going to do is actually, because I have this chuck on here with these small jaws, I'm going to just go ahead and put it in there. I've already marked center, so I'm going to bring this up, bring the speed up a little bit. First thing we're going to do is turn this thing around, then I'm going to put a tenon on it. Some people like to guide their hand along the tool rest if it lends itself to that. Take a little bit of a peeling cut there. Notice I've got this anchored on my hip, and I'm just moving my body to go left and right, get this round. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a tenon on the end. I'm going to hold this in a collet chuck. So I'm going to turn this 5/8 of an inch. Let me get my calipers. So I'm going to get these vernier calipers out, and I'm going to measure 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to use my beating and parting tool to make that tenon. Take a peeling cut here, almost riding the bevel. If I lifted the handle, it'd be a scraping cut and it wouldn't be as clean. Do a successive approximation on the end. Almost there. So bring the rest of it back. Chamfer the end just a little bit, make it a little easier to go in the caliper, or in the collet chuck. The collet chuck is really perfect for holding small pieces of wood that'll fit in the collet, something between 1/4 of an inch and about 3/4 of an inch, because of its round surface and it has a lot of steel touching the wood. It doesn't damage the wood and it holds it fairly securely. You still want to have a nice clean shoulder. Let me get that nice and flush up against it. And I'm going to bring up tailstock support. Make sure we got it centered and pressed up against it firmly. Now, as I was saying, if you don't have a collet chuck, there's other ways to do it. Your normal jaws won't hold it. You can simply take a spindle scrap that you got, maybe like this, put a tenon on it to fit the hole, and glue it in. Another way to do it is you can actually turn you a little collet out of some ingrain spindle orientation with a slight bandsaw cut in it so it'll clamp down, and then you can put these in your normal jaw. So that's another technique. Okay, because we're going to get a finial cap, that is the part that goes on top, and the icicle out of that same piece of wood, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the finial cap and take it off, and that'll make it a little less stress and easier turning the details on this long finial. I overshot it. Looks like I might be making a 1/2 inch tenon on this one. This should have been exactly 5/8 of an inch, and it would have been the part that actually goes inside the globe, but because I overshot it, made it a 1/2 inch. So, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put our tenon right here, our 5/8 inch tenon. All right, this part that's going to go on the top of the globe. Well, like so. So this has got to fit in that hole. Now, there's 2 ways you can fit these. You want to have your globe flat and possibly undercut this just a little bit with a very thin parting tool like this. So the outer edge will rest on the outside without any type of gap. That's one technique. That's not the one I like to do. The one I like to do is actually take a skew or possibly my beading and parting tool and put a slight angle here. So no matter what the edge is here, you're going to get that little bit of a shadow line. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to put that slight angle on it, maybe 45 degrees, maybe less. And then no matter what this fits up against it, you're not going to have a gap. Let me slow this down to about 1200. We're going to take this off. We're going to use the smallest parting tool we can because, you know, although this holds it fairly well, this is kind of tough. So we're going to kind of counterbalance it just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put that finial cap in here. Now I think it pays to have some sort of design in mind when you step up to the lathe to make a finial. I'm going to make a finial cap that looks a little bit like that. We're going to put this here in the collet chuck. Now we can think a little bit about the shape we want. We've got, I think I'm going to do a very simple one. I'm just going to bring this in from the side and then pick it up again. I'm going to get my 3/8 inch detail gouge, which I can make small cuts without, you know, worrying about getting into the collet chuck. So let me just take this down a little bit. Okay, let me mention a couple of design considerations. The first one, the finial cap, as it touches the globe, should approximate the same size as the one fitting the bottom, so they'll blend together. If you have both holes the same size, it makes it a little easier to get those about the same size. Also, I would not ever use 2 different pieces of wood, a different color, because that introduces some discord, I think, when you look at it. They need to be the same color. It also helps if the wood is a contrasting color. If you've got dark here, you definitely, I think, want a light finial. If you've got a lighter globe, then you could go with a darker finial or a white finial, or a lighter color, either one. Now, there's 2 ways to handle this. Don't know if y'all can see that. I've drilled a very small sideways hole in here to put in a 16th inch ribbon. That's one way. The other possibility is while it's on the lathe, we can drill a hole for a screw eye. That'd be the typical way. So let's go ahead and do that on this one after I finish shaping it. Okay, that's a pleasing looking shape. Now I need to put a very slight indentation right here for the drill bit we're going to use. Now to drill that hole, since I've got a little indentation, I'm going to use this pin vise and set this on a slow speed, move this up to rest my hand on. And those screw eyes are just not strong enough to screw in here without a pre-drilled hole, or you'll snap them off. So that resolves that problem. Now all we've got to do is sand this up. I'll do that off camera. Okay, I've sanded this up to about 400. If this was an exotic wood, I might go up to 600, even 800. But in this case, this maple, I think this will be fine. Then I'm going to use some of that abrasive paste we've been dealing with the last few videos on finishing. That will get rid of those very fine scratches. Kind of keep it moving, and keep polishing it until there's no residue showing up on your little piece of paper towel. That way, if there's no residue, you should not have any problem with most any type of finish going on top of here. While it's on here, I'm going to go ahead and makes it easier to handle. I'm just going to go ahead and put that screw eye on there. And it gives me something else to hold it on with. And that should fit nicely in there. Actually, in this one, it's a little loose. Some of them it might be tight. Let me show you a little trick. If you did overshoot this a little bit, one trick you can use. Now let's work on the icicle. Now, hopefully I've got a 5/8 inch tenon that'll fit. Now I'm going to use this live center with it, what I call a soft touch, or what I think Captain Eddie calls a soft touch, which is a pretty good name for it. And we're going to bring that up, and that'll give it just enough support where I can easily do some additional turning. I'm going to switch to a smaller tool rest. I do find it very handy to have a little. This one is actually 4 inches, and the other one is about 6. They each serve their purpose. There's lots of different designs for finials, but in this case, the point is going to be towards the tailstock. The part that goes into the globe is going to be on the headstock, and we're going to turn this from right to left. And as we deal with each detail, we'll sand it and finish it, leaving as much support back here to keep it from chattering and flexing as possible. And when we finish an area, we're going to be finished with it, and then we'll move on to the next one. So this is a pretty straightforward, pretty simple design. So basically, have some idea of what kind of pattern you want. Now, let me give you some design considerations. Different people are going to look at it different ways, but generally, you want to have the icicle to be about 2/3 of your ornament. So this might be considered 2/3. This might be 1/3. And if the cap is not very long, that kind of gets ignored. Another way of looking at it is possibly the cap and the ornament might be about 1/3, and then the finial is another third. Try it and see what kind of works for you, but step up to the lathe with some idea of what kind of design you want to have for your icicle and cap. Now, one way you can get this down real fast is using a parting tool. Let's bring this up for some support. All right, let me bring up my other element to get an approximate feel for the measurements. Okay, so this is going to be where we're going to start taking that little icicle down. 3/8 inch spindle gouge. I'm going to worry about this part later. Let me just work on taking some of the bulk of this down, and then we'll do some cleanup here. So we're doing basically a cove. We come in, here's the bevel. We come in at 90 degrees to the wood, and then actually scoop up as if it was almost like an ice cream scoop. Come in from the other direction. All right, let me see if I can clean up that end. I'm going to stop and move that tailstock, or rather tool rest support, just a little bit. I'm going to be real careful, but I'm going to support the back here, being careful not to get chopped up in this little rotor blade here. But just give it just a little bit of support. Okay, now start back. I just look the right portions, and it's not. I made it wrong. Just need to come back about here. All right, before we go too much further, let's take a peek at it, because we really need to be sanding this part over here, but I think we've got enough stability to do that. I'm going to start with 240 grit. We're going to go ahead and pinch a little sandpaper in between there. Slow the lathe down a little bit. Don't want to lose those crisp edges, so be careful not to sand them off. Now again, we're going to use some sanding abrasive paste here to get rid of the very fine scratches. Let's fold it to a clean area. Make sure that we don't have any more residue coming off. Now with these kind of finials, when they're unsupported, it's not a bad idea if you can go ahead and finish these on the lathe. You could spray them off the lathe with lacquer, but I'm going to use a friction polish. Friction polish is basically alcohol and shellac with just a little bit of wax in it. So let's just cover this before we turn it on. Make sure it's all there. Okay. And now we're just going to not go too fast. Not squeeze too hard. Just give it a time. As we do this rubbing, the alcohol will flash off, and you don't need to go at an excessive speed. Now this friction polish, you can sure leave fingerprints on it, so you're going to have to be careful when you're touching it to use something like clean kitchen towel, paper towel, so as not to get your fingerprints on it until it's cured for at least 24 hours. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next detail. All right, now we're going to come in this side again with that bevel 90 degrees. Do our little scooping action. Take your time, don't press too hard. Tool's not sharp, go sharpen it. Okay, I've got this element sanded and finished with that friction. Now all we're going to do is part it off. We're going to give ourselves, maybe 1/4 of an inch size tenon to fit inside that globe. I'm going to use the very thin parting tool so as to minimize the stress on this. Come back a little bit, enlarge that part. Now we're going to just catch this. Again, don't try and avoid getting our fingerprints all over it. Don't touch it, let it kind of fall in your hand. And there we go. Okay, if you don't get these items sized just right, it's not a disaster. Let me show you a couple of ways to deal with it. Number one, a sanding stick. Put a piece of abrasive on a thin board or use an emery board and just take it down just a little bit. This one is just real close. I could put it on there, but the glue is going to take up a little room and then would make it, as it swells the fibers, it'd make it tough to slip on. So we're just going to touch this up just a little bit all the way around. And I think that's all it's going to take to fit on that. It's a nice friction fit, a little bit of glue, and it'll pop right in there. Now for the top, as I said, it winds up, the top is actually a little large, I think, when I was hollowing it. So I said you get a piece of thread. I didn't have thread handy, but I had some of this very fine copper wire. So I'm just going to take a little piece of copper wire and cut off a little piece like this. And then I'm just going to take that finial cap, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with some accelerator, and then I'm going to just do a little twist on here. That accelerator, once it gets on there, you don't have to rush. It may dry, but it's going to do its job. So well, I'll get it here in a minute. Just bear with me. Okay, now that I've got it almost secure, now I can hit it with a drop of CA, it'll stick, dry almost instantly. And now I can take this little piece of copper wire, just bring it around like that. Right at the edge. Okay, glue. We'll just snip, it's not sticking. That may be all it takes. So I'm just going to snip this off. I just wanted to have a nice mechanical fit for the glue to have some place to hold on to. And we're going to give that just a second to dry. But I believe that will give that, yeah, that should fit in there. Yeah, that'll fit in there good. Okay. I'm just going to put a little carpenter's glue on each of these and pop them in place and let them dry overnight. Okay, I like to finish up my ornaments with this 1/16 inch thread. I've been able to buy this at Hobby Lobby. I have not been successful at Michael's. This is one of the tips I have in my video. I'll have a link to 10 tips for making Christmas tree ornaments. So it works well for those side drilled holes, but even for the ones, I hate to give away an ornament with just a screw eye like that, when you can take a little bit of a cord or a small piece of red ribbon and just make you a little loop on the thing and tie it off, and then that's what they can actually hang it on the tree with, or their ornament stand, and then snip off that end. So now we've got that lovely ornament. Makes a great gift. I'll have a link to that video with 10 tips for your turned Christmas tree ornaments. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you got any comments, leave them in the comments below. Y'all stay safe and come on back here.